Good evening, everybody, to Torah is for Everyone. Tonight, we're going to be speaking on who knows the Torah portion. Who knows the name of it?
Mishpatim.
Good boy, chick. Mishpatim, it means judgments. So we welcome Dr. Jerry Lipstein. Good to see you, Jerry, again. Miriam, it's always good to hear from you and to see you. And Baruch, good to see you. I see you're wide awake and ready to go. And I am, again, so excited about this portion. You know, last week, let me just share the screen, because what I want to remind us of is where we were last week. Last week, we talked about Yitro, the giving of the 10 Commandments. And here it says, if we go back, because we have to keep things in context, all the people witnessed the thunder and the lightning, the blast of the shofar, the mountain was smoking, and when the people saw it, they fell back and stood at a distance. You speak to us, they said to Moses, and we will obey. But don't let God speak to us, because we may die. Moses answered the people, don't be afraid, for God has come only in order to test you, in order that the fear of God may be ever with you, so that you do not go astray. Astray from what? Who knows?
From God himself, from the 10 Commandments.
We had just received the 10 Commandments, exactly. So the people remained at a distance while Moses approached the thick cloud. Thus shall you say to the Israelites, you yourself saw that I spoke to you from the heavens. With me, therefore, you shall not make any gods of silver, nor make for yourself any gods of gold. So this is where we were. And now we're coming to Mishpatim. Ve'ele ha-mishpatim asher tasim lefanechem. These are the judgments that you shall set before them. And it begins with slavery. Now, one of the most important things for us to remember as we're reading through, our rabbi always taught us, let's not get caught up in the minutia, in the minute details. Because remember, our rabbi always said, when you read the Torah, read it thinking three things. When was it written? What was the society like in those days? To whom was God speaking? And where were they? In this case, they were still at Mount Sinai, which means this is universal. If God had given this to us in Israel, it would have been, the Jews could have said, well, this belongs to us. But here, this is where he had met Yitro, last week. And he was a Midianite. This was where the tribes, would pass through. There was no one really living. They were, what's the word? Oh my goodness, what's the word for the nomads? They were like nomadic tribes that lived in that area, that wandered. So here, God is speaking at a time that's very different from the society today. So here it's beginning with slavery. And today we may think that there are no more slaves, but actually slavery is rampant. You see slavery in all areas of our lives. And we could get into a lot of detail about the type of slavery. One of the slaveries that is really real for us as a people right now are how Hamas has come in to our country, to Israel, how they have kidnapped humans, women, men, children, babies, and have made them their slaves. And we're going to be even reading here in the Mishpatim about what should happen to people who kidnap others. So this is very relevant for us today. So remember, because don't think of the slaves as the way it was then, because we don't have that right now. We may be slaves 50% of the year because we work 50% of the year for the government, and then we can keep 50% of what we earn, or maybe even less. So here, if you acquire a Hebrew slave, that person shall serve 6 years and go free in the 7th. If a male slave came in single, he shall leave single. If he had a wife, his wife shall leave with him. If his master gave him a wife, she has borne him children, the wife and her children shall belong to the master. He shall leave alone. But if the slave declares, I love my master and my wife and children, I do not wish to go free. Remember, as I'm reading, if anything that I'm reading resonates with you in any way about something that we are experiencing and can apply to our lives today, don't hesitate to interrupt, because this is how we have to look at it. So
When
he
you have
told,
a cheap job,
I have a
and you're
question. I have a
working for
question.
cheap slave.
hold on, one at a time only. Sorry, go ahead.
When you have cheap job and they pay you cheap wages.
That's
You're
the type of
slavery.
slavery. Exactly. People have to be, the Torah teaches us, the bosses to treat their servants with equity, with justice. Jerry, what were you saying?
I'm just wondering, when the slaves get sick, what do they do?
Well, the master had to take care of them.
Will he take care of them? They're sick and old. Does he take care of them?
Yes, they would take care of them. He would be
But
brought.
I don't think slavery, the word there, has the same connotation, or it's the same, well, obviously it's not the same context as when, for example, they were in Egypt and being whipped to make bricks faster, blah, blah, blah. Not all slavery is a horrible thing. It's, you know, they lived with their families and they worked and they were part of the household.
Well, that was what God was doing in this. Remember, the slavery was the rule of the day. Countries, one of the first things, and even today, when a country goes in, all through our history, they've gone in and they've taken slaves. God wasn't changing the system. He was slowly changing us within a system. In other words, slavery, he wanted to undo slavery, but he didn't do it all at once. He was taking slavery and changing how we were to treat the slaves first. It's always a process. He never eliminates things like all at once. I don't know if I'm making myself clear.
Yeah, I understand. The same thing. It's the same thing with the sacrificial system.
Exactly.
It's not ideally what God was weaning it from us and making it different. When we sacrificed, it wasn't to appease the gods as other people were doing, or to it was a different thing. It was making it clearing a way for us to go before God, and we couldn't give it up in the same thing as this. We couldn't. That was the thing of the day, but the context was different. We weren't giving it
Exactly.
to gods. It was only one God, and it wasn't with the same kind of fear and terror that people went before their gods, fearing that maybe he would kill them in his anger if he rejected their sacrifice or whatever. It wasn't an angry God that they went before. So this is the same thing. Slavery was part of the context of the times, and now to get them slowly out of it was a gradual process.
Yes. And God would teach them to treat their slaves properly. Here, like it says, when a parent sells a daughter as a slave, he shall not go free she shall not go free as other slaves do. If she proves to be displeasing to her master, who designated her for himself, he must let her be redeemed. He shall not have the right to sell her to outsiders, since he broke faith with her. And if the master designated her for his son, he shall deal with her as the practice with free maidens. In other words, he needs to treat her equally. If he takes another into his household, he must not withhold from the first one, from this one, her food, her clothing, and her conjugal rights. He needs to treat her fairly. If he fails her in these 3 ways, she shall go free without payment. And here, one who fatally strikes another party shall be put to death. This is all these mishpatim. When one of the things that our sages have taught us is that these mishpatim comprise the 613 commandments that we Jews need to keep. According to our rabbi, he disagreed. These mishpatim are the ways in which we can apply the 10 commandments, are the examples. Like this one who fatally strikes another party shall be put to death. The commandment that it was referring to, you shall not commit murder. So each one is going to show us how to keep the commandments. And the other thing that we're going to see here in the Mishpatim, there was no prison system. If someone did something that warranted death, and he was going to tell us what warranted death, the person needed to be put to death. Of course, there needed to be equitable judges, judges who couldn't be bought, judges who were God-fearing men. And you could never, you always had to have 2 or 3 witnesses. And not only were there 2 or 3 witnesses, but the one who accused the others needed to be the first one to cast the first stone. They needed to be fully involved. So there always had to be justice. So and if someone killed someone by accident, unpremeditated, there would be cities that would be built that they could go and hide and run away from the family so that vengeance could not be taken out on them. So this was a system. I mean, today's prison system is very unjust. And the only just system is right here in the Torah for all human beings. If a man did so, but not by design, if he didn't premeditate it, it came about by an act of God, I will assign you a place to which he can flee, which is one of these cities of refuge. When one party schemes against another and kills through treachery, this is premeditated, you shall take that person, even if he's at my very altar, and put him to death. That's why people who believe in the Torah, who follow the Torah, believe in the death penalty. But again, the justice system needs to be honorable. There needs to be a true system of justice who live under the Torah. One who strikes one's father or mother shall be put to death. Which commandment is this? Who knows?
Honor your mother and your father.
Exactly.
That's the 5th commandment.
The 5th commandment.
Yeah.
Honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long upon this earth. Here, one who kidnaps another person, whether having sold or still holding the victim, shall be put to death. The people who kidnap others need to be put to death. That's how much God hates kidnapping. It's a horrible thing. And we're praying for all those who have been kidnapped, not only in Israel, which is so close to our hearts, but also around the world. This is something that so many nations do. People who've gone to Mexico, people are afraid to go visit some parts of Mexico because they're kidnapped and held for ransom. One who insults one's father or mother shall be put to death. Again, honor your father and your mother. Here what does it say here? Insults is really a deeper, reviles. Like when you hate your parents, imagine they shall be put to death. Eventually, those people can become so sick that they today, I mean, we're not going to put them to death, but they will die. Maybe from sickness, maybe something will happen to them. When 2 parties quarrel and one strikes the other with a stone or a fist, and the victim doesn't die, but has to take to bed, if that victim then gets up and walks outside with a staff, the assailant shall go unpunished, but he needs to pay for his time of not idleness. He needs to pay for his time of recuperation and the cure, which makes sense. I remember when my son-in-law was hit by a car, a woman, I don't know what I don't know if she fell asleep at the wheel or what happened. She went up on the sidewalk while my son-in-law was coming home, and she hit him, and he ended up for weeks in the hospital. I don't know if she paid for this. His insurance had to pay. His family had to do everything to make sure, but she would have had to make sure that everything was covered. And that's righteous and equitable. But now we don't do that.
Nobody's fault.
Pardon?
It's nobody's fault.
It was her fault.
But that's the insurance. Nobody's fault.
Yeah, but I know, but we pay for insurance, but really in the Torah, this is what would have had to happen so that we won't need insurance because people are responsible. When a slave owning party strikes a slave, whether male or female, with a rod, who dies there and then, this must be avenged. You see, when we were slaves in Israel, in Egypt, I mean, and someone was killed, there would be no avenging. That's the way it was. But here God is showing us that that is wrong. But if the victim survives a day or two, this is not to be avenged, since the one is the other's property. But he still would have to take care of him, like you were asking before, Jerry. When two or more parties fight and one of them pushes a pregnant woman and a miscarriage results, but no other damage ensues, the responsible shall be fined according to the woman's husband, as the woman's husband may exact, the payment to be based on reckoning. So they would come together, they would meet with one of the judges that were assigned. Remember, with Moses, we had all those judges, some to take care of 10, some 100, some 1,000. Some would be brought to Moses, and they would decide what that party had to pay. But if another damage ensues, the penalty shall be life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, bruise for bruise.
It seems pretty, I mean, I'm not going to argue with the Torah, but I'm questioning, isn't it pretty brutal if the woman has a miscarriage because of the fall? That's a life.
That's a life.
So it seems so trivial, but no other damage ensues. Isn't that damage enough? The one responsible, I don't fully understand, anyway, it just seems like it's an incredible thing that. What, Frank?
You don't want to fall on your stomach.
Annie.
Jerry, what do you think about that?
Which one?
This one that we just read, what Miriam said.
That's I was listening to that. It's wasn't that clear, so I just sort of it wasn't that clear for me, so I just didn't try to come to an analysis.
I'm just trying to think of the context of the times. Okay, and he pushes. Maybe he didn't purposely push her, but she was somehow mixed up in the fight.
Yeah, because it seems that there were
two more.
One of them pushes a pregnant woman, and a miscarriage results. But no, the woman herself is not hurt. The one responsible shall be fined according to the woman's husband. Maybe, to tell you the truth, this warrants.
Well, what it says here, the payment is to be based on reckoning. So you have to get a Solomon to determine what the damage could be. Exactly.
They needed to come before the judges and to see. Remember, it also, I don't know if he's still talking about slavery.
It's quite complicated. Did he push the woman? Did he intend to to hurt the fetus? Did he know
Exactly.
that there was a fetus? It's not this.
Yeah,
It's
that's what I
Yeah,
agree.
well, that's
It-
why they had to have a system of justice. So
and
that,
Because
was
it
the
doesn't look like he was fighting her.
and,
She
and,
was
and,
just in the way, and it's like,
and was
yeah,
he provoked? Was he provoked? They also say if you cut your fingernails or other nails and you leave them lying around, and a pregnant woman steps on them and slips and loses a child, that throwing around your cut nails recklessly makes you culpable. Have you heard that one, Peggy?
no, I haven't. I'm sure there are millions of that in the Talmud. There's many things, but each case has to be brought before righteous judges and they would decide. But here, the bottom line is that when it says life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, equitable, it means just justice would have to be done. And so each case would have to be handled on its
And in
own
many
merits.
in many cases, they say like tooth for tooth, etc. And some explain it to say not more than a tooth for tooth.
Right. It has to be a equal measure. You're right.
But
did you miss a sentence? They go
No.
up again. Did we say that last one? Above the one verse above? This one, when a slave
Here, when a slave owning party strikes the eye of a slave, male or female, and destroys it, that person shall let the slave go free on account of the eye. If the owner knocks out the tooth of a slave, male or female, that person shall let the slave go free on account of the tooth. So these are things that, would have occurred in those days. How we would apply it today, I don't know. All these would have to be studied, each on its own merit. But basically, I don't know, a slave at that time was a little different than the slave today. I don't want to get into the details. I want us to look at a broader picture of what's going on.
But that answer, Peggy,
Yes.
that each case shall be decided on its own merit, case by case basis. You heard that?
Yes.
For me, that's a bit of evading the question.
Okay.
No, if someone says, well, what would you do in this case? And they say, well, it's a case by case basis. In a way, they're evading the question.
No, but that's why that's why they were set up a system of judges, of honorable, righteous judges, men who loved God. And when you have God in your life, when he know how really is, then God gives us, it says in the Proverbs, there is wisdom in the counsel of many. So when you sit and they discuss each case, then there's going to be, justice will prevail. Like here,
Well, you
if
can't always, every person may have a little bit of bias, no matter what. So nobody's.
that's why they don't judge alone. That's why they'll sit with a judge, maybe 10 judges, or it's brought to a council of people. That's why it says wisdom comes in the council of many.
And that's why in the Sanhedrin, when there's 70 people and all 70 would convict a person unanimously, that person will go free. Because if not one out of the 70 people will speak for the possible, that means they haven't turned up every single stone, because out of 70 people, at least one person should say something different than the full group. I don't know if you were aware of that.
So no. So there has to be they all have to agree, you're saying?
No, no, there has to be at least one dissenting voice. If 70 Sanhedrin people, this is, I believe, in the Talmud, if 70 Sanhedrin people will say that this person must be put to death, he goes free. There must be at least one dissenting voice with alternate. That means if you, and my explanation is that if there's not one dissenting voice, you have not examined the thing fully.
Well, I don't know. You know,
That's a
I
little,
don't,
it's
I
a
don't go
little,
by
it's a little
the
hard.
Sanhedrin. I go by,
Yeah,
because
I know.
the
It's a little bit hard to say because now when you have a jury, you have 12 people, they all have to agree. But
Is that,
well, the
I mean,
system of the law today is not necessarily a righteous one, because you don't have people who are sitting with a fear of God. You also have, and it goes by precedence, you know, which is not a just system because of,
my explanation is that every person, being a person, God-made person, has to at least have one positive thing to be said about them, at least one.
I think, but now we have lawyers, we have defense lawyers. So even if a mass murderer goes up to the stand, it's not that he's going to say, the defense lawyer is not going to say this guy is good and he didn't murder anyone, but he's still pleading in the man's defense in order to get him a different kind of sentence, maybe an easier one. So that would be the one dissenting voice. There's always, even in our flawed law system, there is room to hear both sides. So I don't know about the Sanhedrin. I haven't
No,
heard.
so what you said, Miriam, is well taken. When someone, even they have eyewitnesses, he must be given a lawyer, I think, anyhow.
Well, everyone has the right to plead his case, even if he's, heaven forbid Hitler should have gone to court, but I mean, that's the way the court system works from what I know. But I don't know about the Sanhedrin.
okay, let's continue on. If the owner knocks out the tooth of a slave, male or female, that person shall let the slave go free on account of the tooth. When an ox gores a man or a woman to death, the ox shall be stoned, and its flesh shall not be eaten, but the owner of the ox is not to be punished. That to me is interesting because here, however, if, here, this is what I was going to say. If the ox has been in the habit of goring, and it's the owner, although warned, has failed to guard it, and it kills a man or a woman, the ox shall be stoned, and the owner too shall be put to death.
Yeah.
So that makes
yeah.
sense. If ransom is imposed, the owner must pay whatever is imposed to redeem the owner's own life. So if it gores a minor, male or female, the owner shall be dealt with according to the same rule. If the ox gores a slave, male or female, its owner shall pay 30 shekels of silver to the master, and the ox shall be stoned. It seems they had a hierarchy of value between free and male and slave. This would take time till that was no longer part of society. When any party opens a pit, when you dig a hole and any party digs a pit and does not cover it, and an ox or a donkey falls into it, the responsible for the pit must make restitution, paying the price to the owner, but keeping the dead animal. One of the things about the justice system is restitution. You don't just, today, if someone steals, according to the Mishpatim, not only does the thief have to give back what they stole, but they make restitution by giving extra. And this is what has to happen today. When any party's ox injures a neighbor's ox and it dies, They shall sell the live ox and divide its price. They shall also divide the dead animal. If, however, it's known that the ox was in the habit of goring and its owner has failed to guard it, that person must restore ox for ox, but keep the dead animal. When any party steals an ox or a sheep and slaughters it or sells it, that person shall pay 5 oxen for the one that he stole and 4 sheep for the sheep. So he needs, if he's going to steal, he better be ready to pay it back. This is interesting. If the thief is seized while tunneling and beaten to death, there is no blood guilt in that
What's
case.
This tunneling has a star. What's that?
Under a
House
wall,
breaking.
it means he
Oh,
tunneled,
under a wall
he
for
dug
house
under the
breaking.
wall to break into a house.
All right, okay.
So if a thief is seized while he's trying to get into the house and he's beaten to death, there's no blood guilt. In other words, you're allowed to protect your home.
Right.
Today, we don't have that. In
No,
many places, you're not allowed. If you beat him up, you can go to jail.
right.
If the sun had already risen, there's blood guilt in that case. The thief must make restitution, and if lacking the means, be sold for the theft. See, if these things are done, people will think twice before committing these crimes. If today, what's the big deal? But if what was stolen, whether ox or donkey or sheep, it's found alive and in hand, that person shall pay double. When any party who owns livestock lets it loose to graze in another's land, and so allows a field or a vineyard to be grazed bare, restitution must be made for the impairment of that field or vineyard. All this has to do with loving your neighbor as you love yourself. Treat others as you would have them treat you. Your rights end where my rights begin. When a fire is started and spreads to thorns so that standing or growing grain is consumed, the one who started the fire must make restitution. When any party gives money or goods to another for safekeeping, and they are stolen from that other party's house, if caught, the thief shall pay double. If the thief is not caught, the owner of the house shall depose before God, which means, see note at 21:6. This thief shall pay double and deny laying hands on the other's property. In charges of misappropriation pertaining to an ox, an ass, a sheep, a garment, or any other loss, whereof one party alleges, this is it, in case both parties shall come before God. The one whom God declares guilty shall pay double to the other. This was set down at a time when God was just so real to the people. Remember, he spoke to Moses face to face. He said, Joshua heard from God. Others, he spoke to the priests, those who were going to be set aside. At this point, there were no priesthood, but there was that understanding that God was so real in our lives. If only we could get back to that. When any party gives to another an ass, an ox, a sheep, or any other animal to guard, and it dies, or is injured, or is carried off, with no witness about, an oath before the Lord shall decide between the two of them that the one had not laid hands on the property of the other, the owner must acquiesce and no restitution be made. But if the animal was stolen from the guardian, restitution shall be made to its owner. If it was torn by beasts, the guardian shall bring as evidence, not needing to replace what has been torn by beasts. If any party borrows an animal from another and it dies or is injured, its owner not being with it, restitution must be made. So really the bottom line is whatever we do to hurt another, we must make restitution. If a man seduces a virgin from whom the bride price has not been paid and lies with her, he must make her his wife by payment of the bride price. In other words, you better be careful before you go to sleep with another woman who's and you have to respect her as you would a wife. That would, let me
That's
tell
so
you,
different from some of the, people living around them. This is the beginning of respect for a woman. She's not. I don't know if this occurred. A lot of the more pagan tribes or whatever, you just took what you wanted.
exactly.
Like you wouldn't have to make these laws if these things didn't actually happen.
Exactly. If her father refuses to give her to him, he must still weigh out in silver and in accordance with the bride price for virgins. You shall, look at this, you shall not tolerate, literally, let live, a sorceress. There's so many of those in pagan cultures, and even today.
Yeah.
Even when we walked today, there was a whole store on witchcraft, you know,
Yeah.
and it may look like, yeah, oh, we're spreading the light. There's like white witchcraft, white witches. They seem to be doing good for others. They're letting in the light. But God, this is all paganism. Whoever lies with a beast shall be put to death. Whoever sacrifices to a god other than Yud He Vav He alone shall be Yud He Levado. Proscribed. I'm not sure what proscribed means, but it
Doesn't
can't
sound good.
doesn't sound good. You shall not wrong or oppress a stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. We need to take care of the stranger among us. All these, here it says, gerim, those who come to live among us. They're not less than us. These Mishpatim were not only given to us as natural born Israelites, they were given to those who live among us, who want to be part of us. We were always to remember that we were strangers in the land of Egypt. Your communal leaders in ancient Israel, the responsibility for assisting and protecting widows and the fatherless was understood to rest upon local householders, elders, priests, and the king. And they give different references. We shall not ill-treat any widow or orphan. They need to be taken care of in our communities. If you do mistreat them, I, God, will heed their outcry as soon as they cry out to me, and my anger shall blaze forth, and I will put you to the sword, and your own wives shall become widows, and your children orphans. Here we get midah keneged midah, measure for measure. If we think that God doesn't hear us when there are people in our community who abuse orphans, widows, strangers, we're fooling ourselves, because those things will happen to us. If you lend money to my people, to the poor among you, do not act toward them as creditor, exact no interest from them. So among our own people, if they're in need, we need to lend to them without interest and allow them to pay us back as they can.
That's like, remember Hebrew free loan?
The free loan is still here.
Yeah.
If you take your neighbor's garment in pledge, you must return it before the sun sets. It's the only available clothing that he has to cover himself. What else should your neighbor sleep in? Therefore, if that person cries out to me, I will pay heed, for I am compassionate. God hears everything. He knows everything that we are doing. And when we disobey his commandments and his mishpatim, we are spreading darkness in this world, and there are consequences for that in the whole world. It's not just in our own lives. You shall not revile God, nor put a curse upon any leader among your people. You shall not put off skimming the first yield of your vats. You shall give me the male firstborn among your children. Hear what God is saying, that if He has blessed us, if He has provided for us, whatever we yield, bring our tithes to Him. That's what we do in our community. That's why we are able to continue as a community, because all the members in our community bring the first fruits of their earnings and they bring it to God. And that's how we're able to help others. You shall not put off the skimming of the first yield of the first fruits. You shall do the same with your cattle and your flocks. 7 days the male firstborn shall remain with its mother. On the 8th day you give it to me. This is where we have this circumcision. You shall be holy to me, kadosh, kodesh, set apart. You must not eat flesh torn by beasts in the field. You shall cast it to the dogs. Obviously, this was something that was abominable to God, and we would have been sick. You must not carry false rumors. The 9th commandment, don't bear false witness. You shall not join hands with the guilty to act as a malicious witness.
Wow.
When people are speaking against you, don't join in with them. Stop them. Don't allow it. Doesn't only mean when you're sitting on a jury. It means when you're in a group of people and you're talking about someone and even lying about them. Don't get involved in that. Get out of there. You shall neither side with the mighty or others in a multitude. Don't side with the multitude to do wrong. You shall not give perverse testimony in a dispute so as to pervert it in favor of just because there's a majority doesn't mean that they're right.
Same with bullying. When there's a
Exactly.
gang of people bullying and they want to be cool. I mean, at so many levels this applies. It takes
Exactly.
courage to speak the truth.
Exactly, because you don't want to be beaten up and you don't want to be bullied. But we need to
Right.
stand up to bullies and not allow this. And if everyone did, we wouldn't have what's going on now.
Right.
Nor shall you show deference to a poor person in dispute. It doesn't necessarily, what it's saying is, don't always stand up for the underdog, because you don't know all the, you have to know in every case what is going on. Just because someone looks like the poor person in a dispute doesn't mean he's right. When you encounter your enemy's ox or ass wandering, you must take it back. It's not your animal, but if you see something that belongs to your neighbor, bring it back to them, because you would want them to do the same for you. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. When you see the donkey of your enemy lying under its burden and would refrain from raising it, you must nevertheless help to raise it. Here, what is this as for the whole verse? You shall not subvert the rights of your needy in their disputes. Keep far from a false charge. Do not bring death to those who are innocent and in the right, for I will not acquit the wrongdoer. God says that vengeance is his. So if we know that someone is being falsely accused, we need to stand up. Do not take bribes, for bribes blind the clear-sighted and upset the pleas of those who are in the right. This speaks for itself. Do not oppress a stranger for you know the feelings of the stranger, having yourselves been strangers in the land of Egypt. God is always referring to that our time in Egypt, because it's so important. There were so many things for us to learn. 6 years you shall sow your land, gather in its yield. This is the year. The 7th is the year of the Shemitah. In the 7th year, leave the land rest and lie fallow. Let the needy among your people eat from it. And what they leave, let the wild beasts eat. You shall do the same with your vineyards and your olive groves. And because here what God was saying is, you need to trust me. In the same way that here, 6 days shall you work, and on the 7th day you shall cease from your labor, in order that your animals, your ass, your donkey, your oxen, they may rest. They work hard also in the field. And that your home-born slave, those slaves that you had born in your home, and your stranger may also be refreshed, because we didn't have that in Egypt. Be on guard concerning all that I've told you. Make no mention of names of other gods. They shall not be heard on your lips. I remember the first time I read this, I remembered back to when I was in my late 20s, and I had gone to McGill to learn transcendental meditation. And they gave me the name of a god, which I had to mention over and over and over in order to, I was literally invoking the name of another god, but I didn't know. Thank goodness I didn't know. But once I realized, I stopped doing that. We are not to allow other gods to have anything to do in our lives.
It's
There's
funny,
no-
even the Jewish months are named after gods.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. The Jewish months are named after gods. Yeah. And it's not in the Torah. The month, the new moon, we don't know all the names of the month. We know the name, the one name was given to us at the month Nisan was really Aviv, which is spring.
So it's Nisan. I don't know. So it's really a
Nisan is a Babylonian name.
Nisan.
Nisan, Tammuz, they're
Yeah,
all
Tammuz I know is a god. Tammuz.
yeah, these are Babylonian names. And they may be other names. I haven't looked into each of them, but we were not to make mention of them, and we do. 3 times a year, hold a festival for me. These are festivals for all of us to go down to Egypt. Here it says, you shall observe the feast of unleavened bread, which is the matzot, hamatzot, eating unleavened bread for 7 days as I have commanded you, at the set time in the month Chodesh of Aviv. For in it you went forth from Egypt, and no one shall appear before me empty-handed. Again, whatever he gives us, we bring back to him. And the feast of the harvest, which is Shavuot, the first fruits of your work, of what you sow in the field, we bring that to him. The feast of the ingathering, Sukkot, at the end of the year, when you gather in the results of your work from the field, 3 times a year, all your males shall appear before the sovereign Lord. How many people of our people do that now? How many of our people journey 3 times a year? They did when we had the temple, but now it's like not important. We keep these to the best that we can here in the diaspora, and we bring offerings 3 times a year. We give extra offerings for those who observe this, and we're blessed. 3 times a year, all our males needed to appear before God. You shall not offer the blood of my sacrifice with anything leavened. This was at Pesach. And the fat of my feast offering shall not be left lying until morning. The choice first fruits of your soil you shall bring to the house of God. You shall not boil a kid in its mother's milk. Now, why is that here? What does that have to do with this? Boiling a kid in his mother's milk had to do with sacrificing to false gods. The pagans had a ritual where when a woman wanted to become pregnant, they would take a kid, pull it from its mother's, nursing from its mother's, kill the kid, boil it in its mother's milk, give that milk to drink to the mother, and she would become pregnant. That was a pagan ritual. Because here he's talking about, you always have to take things in context. Do not offer the blood sacrifice. And this has to do with an offering, a pagan offering to false gods.
So it's nothing to do with milk and
Nothing
meat.
to do with eating milk and meat. This has all been added, all been created by our sages. Has nothing to do with it. We have made such a big deal of the eating milk and meat that we forget all these other things. Now, I want you to listen to this, because this, to me, when I read this, I am sending a messenger before you to guard you on the way, to bring you to the place that I have made already. Listen to him, pay heed to him, and obey him. Do not defy him, for he will not pardon your offenses, since my name is in him. I don't know who this messenger is, but we always have had a malach. Could have been Gabriel, Michael. We've always had an angel go before us in battle. Christianity has said that this was Yeshua, that this was Jesus. But when you read it for what it is, it has nothing to do with Yeshua, with Jesus. He wasn't there. We don't know who this messenger was. And when it says, my name is in him, he is representing, it's like an ambassador. If you send an ambassador to another country, you give him full authority to represent that country. And this angel would be representing God. If you obey him and do all that I say, meaning if you will obey the words of 10 commandments, the words of these Mishpatim, listen to what he says. I will be an enemy to your enemy and a foe to your foes. He will fight for us. He will do battle for us. When my messenger, it's a human or an angel, but it's not God. My messenger goes before you and brings you to all these pagan nations, and I annihilate them. You shall not bow down to their gods in worship or follow their practices, but tear down and smash their pillars to bits. You shall serve your God, Yud-He-Vav-He, who will bless your bread and your water. He will bless everything that he gives us. And look at this. I will remove sickness from your midst. No woman in your land shall miscarry or be barren. I will let you enjoy the full count of your days. We would live long. I will send forth my terror before you, and I will throw into panic all the people among whom you come. And I will make all your enemies turn tail before you. They will run from you. I will send a plague ahead of you, and it shall drive out before you the Hivites, the Canaanites, the Hittites. Here it also says hornets. He will send ahead of you. They will run out of terror from us. I will not drive them out before you in a single year, lest the land become desolate and the wild beasts multiply to your hurt. I will drive them out before you little by little, until you have increased and possessed the land. Now listen to this, because I got so excited when I read this. Remember how they're out marching from the river to the sea, Palestine shall be free.
You
Look
mean
what God,
yeah.
from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. That's what they're saying. Look what God says. I will set your borders from the Sea of Reeds to the Sea of Philistia, from the wilderness of the Euphrates, the river, for I will deliver the inhabitants of the land into your hands, and you will drive them out before you. This is the truth of what it's going to be. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, but will be given to the Hebrews. You shall make no covenant with them and their gods. They shall not remain in your land, lest they cause you to sin against me, for you will serve their gods, and it will prove a snare to you. Then God said to Moses, come up to Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh with Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, and 70 elders of Israel, and bow low from afar. Moses alone shall come near, but the others shall not come near Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, nor shall the people come up with him. Here Moses is being sent up. Moses went and repeated to the people all the commands of the Lord and all his Mishpatim, and all the people answered with one voice, this is what we said, all the things that the Lord has commanded, we will do. Moses then wrote down all the commands of the Lord. Early in the morning, he set up an altar at the foot of the mountain with 12 pillars for the 12 tribes of Israel. He designated some assistants, some young men, Na'arim, among the Israelites, and they offered olim, burnt offerings, and sacrificed bullocks as offerings of well-being, thanksgiving to the Lord. Moses took one part of the blood and put it in basins, and the other part of the blood he dashed against the altar. Then he took the record of the covenant, the things he had just written, read it aloud to the people, and again we said, all that the Lord has spoken, we will faithfully do with emunah. And Moses took the blood, dashed it on the people, and said, this is the blood of the covenant that the Lord now makes with you concerning these commands. And Moses and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and 70 elders of Israel ascended, and look at this. They saw the God of Israel, under whose feet was the likeness of a pavement of sapphire.
I love that.
Me too, for the very sky for purity. Yet God did not raise a hand against the leaders of the Israelites. They saw God, and they ate and they drank. And the Lord said to Moses, come up to me on the mountain and wait there, and I will give you the stone tablets with the teachings and the commandments which I have inscribed to instruct them. So Moses and Joshua arose, and Moses ascended the mountain. To the elder, he said, wait here for us until we return to you. Remember, he went up with Joshua. You have Aaron and Hur with you. Let anyone who has any legal matter approach them. So in the meantime, they were put in charge. When Moses ascended the mountain, the cloud covered the mountain. The presence of the Lord dwelled on Mount Sinai, and the cloud hid it for 6 days. And on the 7th day, God called Moses from the midst of the cloud, and the presence of the Lord, the kavod, appeared in the sight of Israelites as a consuming fire on the top of the mountain. And Moses went into the cloud and ascended the mountain. And Moses remained on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. That's a month and a half. I mean, this is so awesome when you think about it. When I read these, it's just absolutely astounding. I don't know what it's going to take for us today to truly believe in the existence of God and how important it is for us to obey him. We said all that you said we will do. Not
You
only
know,
are we not doing it, we're doing the opposite.
we can, like, I think of my own journey and the type of person I am and how, um, I don't know how to explain this, but I believe in God. I'm trying to live a godly life, even though, of course, I fall short
Don't we
tremendously.
all?
Um, but I
But
sort of,
remember, he made that. He said, when we fall short in Mishpatim, we can make restitution. God is a God of beginning again.
exactly, but I think God has, well, I don't know how to explain it, but I feel that, my time will come when I'm being the way I am, kind of obsessive and stuff, and I say, well, you can't force yourself to feel something that you don't feel. That I want a touch from God, and maybe I'm not ready for it, but only God will do that.
But
In
wait a minute, Miriam.
I have a touch from God, but
I
that's
know you're going by feeling. We didn't say, I promise to do when I feel it.
no, but
We
I
said all that you say we will do. Many
understand
of the
that.
things that you do, you have done, and I've watched you over the years because you have done them even when you didn't feel it.
Well, but maybe I'm not being clear. I agree with what you're saying. It's not that. I mean, I don't need to feel it. It's more. It's somehow the total thing. It's one. It's
Listen, you would come on Shabbat. We would go on Shabbat to synagogue. We would listen to the message. We would spend the day. We would give one day to God. We didn't always feel it. Did we feel like getting up in the morning and saying, "Oh yeah, I'm really excited to get dressed and
no,
go to
but
synagogue"? But we went.
I understand. But I totally understand it. But I'm just saying that the complete. Why is my head so big in this?
You're very
And
close to your camera.
well, no, I'm not.
Yes, you are. Now that's fine. We can
No,
hear
but
you.
this is not comfortable. I'm leaning here on my table.
Well,
Anyway,
then I
it
can't
doesn't
help it.
matter. It
So
doesn't
you
matter.
can push
But
your
what I'm
computer
saying
back.
is that sometimes in God's timing, maybe because of my journey, maybe because of how I've lived my life, maybe because of the type of person I am, it takes time to sort of be prepared. It's like being prepared to see the king. Let's say in real life, if you're being prepared to see the king, and you're type, it's like the King and I, or all these movies. With the metaphor is that we need to be prepared, and maybe God's just working on each one of us. But I can only speak for myself. He's working on me, and making me more ready to have more things revealed. Don't forget, I used to feel like I literally felt like an iron curtain, not a Russia thing, but I literally felt there was an iron curtain between me and God. And now I don't know when it happened. I just turned around one day and that wasn't there. I just knew it wasn't there. So we're all on our journey, and the journey, it doesn't mean it's feelings. It doesn't mean I'm not going to tithe because I don't feel it. I don't mean that. But God sort of, he peels away some onion skin
He
layers on
does.
us to
Because
make us more.
the more we are obedient, the more we see him act in our lives.
Yeah.
The more it's like, look, we got dressed up 2 weeks ago to go to a wedding, and we were looking forward to that wedding for how
Yeah.
long? And yet
Right.
every Shabbat is like a wedding.
Yeah.
We're going before our God. And just because we have our service from home online doesn't mean that we can't have that same feeling, that same to say, you know what? I'm getting dressed and I'm preparing myself to come before the King of the universe. Doesn't matter where we are, whether we're in a big,
No, for
beautiful
sure.
synagogue or whether we're here in front of the camera. The God is the same everywhere.
Right.
So it's a decision. We have to make a decision to choose to be
No,
willing
that I
to be
agree.
to obey
Of
him, to
course.
say, I'm not going to go shopping today. Today is Shabbat. And that is an act of the will. God gave us
Yeah.
free will because he knows we can choose to obey him.
Right.
And when we don't, there are consequences. So, and we can't blame God. We're the ones choosing what we do. He gave
Yeah.
us these mishpatim. Why is it that we're more willing to spend hours on social media listening to all these crazy things out there than to sit with the Torah, to sit and read, what it says in the Word?
Yeah.
It's harder. It really takes an effort, but we need to make the effort because it pays. We see that. Look what he says. I will take all sickness away from you. I will turn your enemies away from you. That's the answer to what we're seeing in the world today. Our enemies are coming against us as a people because we as a people are disobedient and we're blaming everything else except looking at ourselves because we've overcomplicated everything. The commandments are simple. They're not easy. But we've made so many extra laws and rules and regulations so that we can pour all our attention on doing those and feel good about them. But while we're not doing the 10, and God cares about the 10. He doesn't care that I keep crazy strict kosher if I'm cheating my neighbor. Well,
Yeah.
I'm keeping kosher. He never asked us to do that. He told us what we were allowed to offer or not offer to him. But what he did say is, even Yeshua said, be careful what comes out of your mouth. It's more important than what you put into it. What comes out of your heart is what defiles you, not what you put into your mouth. That's why do you think they hated him? They still hate him today. So these mishpatim are so powerful. They're so important. And we may not understand them all. And we can spend as much time looking at them, but we have to step back and take a look at them as a whole. And we can all see something in them. Right, Jer?
Yes, I like to comment. I'd like to know what you call that figure of speech, Miriam. You say an iron curtain or steel curtain fell down. What could you repeat that statement and tell me what?
Okay. It was just my personal experience for years. When something's so personal, it's hard to, not that it's hard to put it into the right words, but my experience, and I know our experiences are not, it's just a part of the whole picture. It doesn't mean God isn't there because I don't experience God. But my experience with God, when I was first led to believe that there's a God that's bigger than my own personal, an anti-atheist. I was an atheist before. The feeling was literally for years like there was a thick barrier between me and God. It felt in my mind, in my whole being, I kept saying an iron curtain. Never mind Russia, I'm not talking about, but it felt like a huge barrier. And I kept praying. I said, God, take that away. Because no matter how much, it says to love your God, the first commandment, love your God, and blah, 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 all this. How I couldn't feel that love. I believed that God was there. And I said, God, I want to love you. That's all I can do. But there was this thick barrier. And then over the years, I don't remember the moment it happened, but I remember I said, it's not there. It's like so amazing. It doesn't
What
mean now
what was not there?
it's just not there anymore.
What was
I
not there?
I had the same thing, but in a different way.
But let me just finish one line. It doesn't mean that I still want more of that removed because I still sometimes, I said, who are you, God? Who are you? Is this real? I mean, I know it's real. It's like, I believe, help me, my unbelief. Who is this? What does this mean? So I still wrestle with that. but that's why I say, for me, my personality, I believe that more of that curtain will, just the same way it happened to me once, it's not finished. And I think it's going to happen more with me and in all of our lives and whatever our experiences are. So I know it's not feelings, because I'm still trying to live the godly life, but it's almost like God is peeling the veil from my eyes. And
That's
that's what,
that's what I experienced more of, a veil. I used to
right,
look up and say, open the veil. I want to be able to see into the spiritual realm.
right,
I
right.
wanted to understand why there was this veil that didn't allow me to know that there was something bigger. I would cry out. I remember going to see this movie years when I was in Vancouver and involved in all that New Age stuff. And I went to see the movie Platoon, remember? And I
Oh,
felt
yeah.
there was such horror in the world, and I would say, I would scream, use me, like, I want to see, are you real?
Yeah.
And I don't know, I guess a lot of people have
Oh,
that,
I'm
that
sure.
sense.
The movie that I think in my whole life I cried the most at, well, there's a few, but one that I really remember. Do you remember, was it Close Encounters?
Close
Where
Encounters of the Third Kind,
there were people who just knew, they were
who felt
given,
drawn to the mountain.
drawn to the mountain.
Yeah,
I remember it was embarrassing, because when you're in a theater, okay, you can cry. It's opened up something inside of me. I could not stop crying.
yeah,
It's like, like your eyes are opened up. It was just something. I was so emotional about it.
yeah,
And I think God, for whatever reason, has his time with each one of them. Maybe because of the different things we've been involved in. It could be that. Maybe because of maybe our own arrogance or own weakness or things that we need to face. All I know is that longing has been with me all my life, and it was so intense in Close Encounters. And the same, there are many movies, but that movie, that that concept of only a select group being called out, and they would look at each other and they knew. Did you see that movie? Remember? Did
yes,
you see it?
yes.
Remember, they would
I
look at
felt the
each other
same thing.
and they
I felt,
just knew.
yeah,
They said, "You've had it. You've had all sorts of people,
yeah,
uh, scruffy, rich, poor," and it just so touched me. That movie overwhelmed me.
yeah. Well, that's why I love when it says, in the prophecies, the eyes of the blind shall see, the deaf shall hear. Like,
Right.
and he says, you have eyes that cannot see. God has to do something,
But
and I
yeah,
don't know what it is in the person's life and who he's going to show it to, but something has to happen. That divine spark that we all have within us is like just awakened.
yeah. And
It's
I think
it's very
just
powerful.
I think just wanting that is the first awakening. I would
Right.
just cry out to God. Remember in the film, the little like toddler who had the touch from, he
Yeah.
was running out. It was
Yeah.
so beautiful. He was a
Yeah.
tiny little, and that he just knew.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure even at Mount Sinai, most of the people didn't want to go near the mountain. They were afraid. They
Yeah.
said, Moses, you speak to us. We don't want to look. We don't want to see. And yet some did. Joshua was just there. He was also, he wanted that. People, take for granted what happened with Joshua, but he experienced many of the same things because
Yes,
God was preparing him to take over from Moses. It wasn't
right.
Moses' two sons who took over. You don't even hear
No,
anything about them.
that's
It has
true.
nothing to do with the family line.
No,
It has to do with who God chooses.
yeah. And look at Caleb.
Caleb was a Gentile.
I know. And just
Yeah,
two of them entered the land. Like, what a calling is that?
exactly. That just goes to show it's a God, it's a universal God, a creator of everybody.
Yeah,
Torah is for everyone. That's why we call it that.
right,
Torah is for
right.
everyone.
Jerry, even you had, maybe you don't remember that you told us of that experience that you had. You remember you told us? That's
Yes,
pretty incredible.
I told you about an experience. You're the only ones I think I told I had a little experience. Yes.
Yeah.
And I've had other friends who've had those experiences. They don't talk about them, but they know. And those are the ones it's up to us to bring the light of Torah into the world. It's really an important calling.
Yeah.
Well, silence is golden, but not when you're on Zoom.
Even
So-
remember, I don't know, I don't want to mention the name. Well, remember in Chosen People there was this person. Anyway, she had a dog, and I know this is crazy, but when she was training the dog had to learn to jump over some sort of hoop and couldn't see their masters. And it was the dog had to learn to trust whatever. And her dog was one of not the dogs didn't want to do it, but her dog was one of the first to do it. And she was so, it was so cute that even a beast learned to, because she prayed that it would learn, and it just leapt over the thing. I remember this story. Even the creatures, even the donkey could learn, like in the.
Exactly. Well, I think we should end here because it's getting late, and if this goes too long, then it's easy to lose interest because we live in an instant generation. So, Jerry, do you want to read the Aaronic benediction, and then we'll say good night?
And the congregation says a little prayer before they receive the benediction. May it be thy will, Lord our God and God of our fathers, that this blessing which thou hast commanded to pronounce upon thy people Israel may be a perfect blessing, forever free from stumbling and iniquity. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'kedushaso shel Aaron v'tzivonu levarech et amo Yisrael v'yahavo yevorechecho Adonai v'yishmerecho Yair Adonai Panav Elecho V'chuneko Yiso Adonai Panav Elecha V'yasein Lecho Shalom V'samu et Shemi al b'nei Yisrael v'ani arvorachem.
May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord shine his face upon you and be gracious to you, and may the Lord lift his countenance upon you and give you peace. So shall they put my name upon the children of Israel, and I will bless them. And we pray for those who have been kidnapped, those who are still held hostage, not only in Israel, but especially in Israel, but those around the world. Lord, we pray that you would comfort them, that you would be with them, that you would set them free, that you would help evil to disappear from this earth, Lord. Let us be faithful to you. Let us bring our light into the world so that the darkness diminishes and the light increases.
Amen. And may it be God's will.
Amen.
Amen.
Exactly. So I wish you all the best. I wish you a Shabbat Shalom. For those who are
Shalom.
watching, thank you for joining us, and we welcome your comments. Please share our videos. Let God's word go out into the world, even more than the messages of dogs and cats. So we'll see you again soon. God
Shabbat
bless you,
shalom.
everybody. Shabbat
God
shalom.
bless you. Shabbat shalom.